The Philadelphia Eagles just made a move that didn't dominate national headlines, but if you understand how championship teams are built, you know this is the type of decision that keeps a Super Bowl window wide open. According to Matt Zenitz of CBS, the Eagles are set to hire Mike Pellegrino, most recently the Buffalo Bills nickelbacks coach, and this is far more significant than it might look at first glance. Let's break this down the right way. This comes after Christian Parker left Philadelphia to become the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, replacing Matt Eberflus. Parker had been serving as the Eagles' defensive backs coach and also worked as pass game coordinator on the defensive side under Vic Fangio. His impact was massive. He helped develop Jair Alexander in Green Bay into one of the top corners in football. He worked with Patrick Surtain early in his career, and Surtain went on to win Defensive Player of the Year in 2024. And here in Philadelphia, Parker helped Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean become first-team All-Pros at outside corner and nickel this past season. That is elite-level development. So when Parker left, there was a real question about how the Eagles would respond. And this is where the structure of the staff gets interesting. Joe Casper, who had been the safeties coach and previously worked under Jonathan Gannon before spending time in Miami with Vic Fangio, was brought back by Fangio and promoted. Casper moves from safeties coach to defensive backs coach and pass game coordinator on defense. There's familiarity there. Casper and Fangio have a strong working relationship. That continuity matters. Now enter Mike Pellegrino. Pellegrino's path into football is unique. He was a star lacrosse player at Johns Hopkins, one of the premier lacrosse programs in the country. He was even a second-round pick in the Major League Lacrosse draft. But in 2015, he broke into the NFL with the New England Patriots as an intern and assistant under Bill Belichick. From there, he climbed the ladder. Belichick eventually named Pellegrino the cornerbacks coach in New England, a role he held from 2019 to 2024. He stayed on during Gerard Mayo's tenure before Mike Vrabel came in and moved in a different direction. Pellegrino then joined the Buffalo Bills in 2025 as their nickelbacks coach, staying in the AFC East and continuing to work with defensive backs at a high level. And the resume speaks loudly. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots. He was on staff when New England beat the Rams and when they completed the historic 28-3 comeback against the Atlanta Falcons. During his time in New England, he worked with Stephon Gilmore, who won Defensive Player of the Year in 2019. He helped develop J.C. Jackson into a high-level player who earned a massive contract. Jonathan Jones has spoken glowingly about him. Christian Gonzalez has grown into one of the top corners in the league, and Pellegrino played a role in refining his game. In Buffalo, he worked with Taron Johnson, another respected corner who earned a significant contract extension. That's outside corners. That's slot corners. That's versatility. And here's what stands out even more. When it was announced that Pellegrino would not be retained in New England, veteran corner Jonathan Jones called him a heck of a coach, just a heck of a guy. He specifically highlighted Pellegrino's ability to build relationships with players regardless of background. That kind of endorsement from a veteran tells you everything about how he connects inside a locker room. Now think about what this means for the Eagles. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were rookie starters for the #1 defense in football on a team that won the Super Bowl. In their second year, they didn't plateau. They elevated. Both earned first-team All-Pro honors from the Associated Press. That is rare air. That is franchise-defining defensive back play. Adding Pellegrino to this staff gives Philadelphia another proven developer of elite talent. Joe Casper will oversee the entire defensive backfield, but the Eagles clearly value Pellegrino's ability enough that they created a significant role for him. Whether the official title lands as defensive backs coach or a specialized position, this is about building the deepest possible coaching staff. And don't overlook the timing. The NFL draft is approaching. The Eagles could target a corner early. A name like Avante Terrell could be on the radar. If that happens, that young player would enter a room coached by Casper and Pellegrino, learning alongside Mitchell and DeJean. That's how you sustain dominance. This is exactly how Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, and Nick Sirianni operate. They invest in people. They invest in coaching. They build infrastructure. Championship teams don't just rely on star players, they rely on star developers.
When you step back and look at it, losing Christian Parker could have been a destabilizing moment for the secondary. Instead, the Eagles responded with experience, proven production, and someone who has coached Defensive Player of the Year talent and Super Bowl champions. So now I want to ask you this, with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean already playing at an all-pro level, and Mike Pellegrino joining this defensive staff, Do you think this move sets up the Eagles' secondary to remain the best unit in football for years to come? And when you really think about it, that's the standard now in Philadelphia. It's not just about being good. It's not just about winning the division. The expectation is dominance. The expectation is sustainability. The expectation is building something that doesn't fall apart the moment a coordinator leaves for a promotion somewhere else. That's what makes this move so important, because let's be honest, when Christian Parker left to become defensive coordinator in Dallas, there was legitimate reason to wonder how much that would impact the secondary. You don't just replace someone who helped develop Jaire Alexander, Patrick Surtain, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean without feeling it. That's high-level coaching impact. That's resume building production. But the Eagles didn't scramble. They didn't settle. They turned to someone who has already proven he can coach elite corners in high-pressure environments. Mike Pellegrino has coached Stephon Gilmore during a Defensive Player of the Year season. He helped mold Christian Gonzalez into one of the premier young corners in the league. He worked with J.C. Jackson during his breakout years. He coached Taron Johnson in Buffalo. And beyond the on-field production, his players speak about him with respect. That matters in a room full of young, confident, all-pro defensive backs. Now let's talk about fit. Vic Fangio's defense demands discipline, communication, and technique. Corners in this system must understand leverage, spacing, and route concepts at a high level. It's not just about athleticism, it's about mental processing and positioning. Pellegrino comes from New England, where detail and preparation are non-negotiable. That translates seamlessly into what Fangio wants defensively. And here's something else that shouldn't be ignored. Pellegrino has worked both outside and inside. That versatility aligns perfectly with what the Eagles have built. Quinyon Mitchell on the outside, Cooper DeJean with inside flexibility, a defense that can disguise coverages and rotate responsibilities without tipping its hand. Having a coach who understands both worlds strengthens that chess match element. Joe Casper now oversees the entire defensive backfield as DB's coach and pass game coordinator. Roy Anderson is expected to step into the safety's role, and Pellegrino slots in to further elevate the corners. That's not patchwork. That's layered depth in coaching. This is what forward-thinking franchises do. They anticipate turnover. They prepare for promotions. They keep the pipeline strong. Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have consistently shown they are willing to invest in infrastructure, not just star contracts. And Nick Sirianni understands that staff cohesion is as important as roster talent. And here's where it gets even more interesting for the long-term outlook. The Eagles are entering another draft cycle with flexibility. If they target a defensive back early, whether that's someone like Avani Terrell or another prospect who fits their mold, that player walks into one of the most development-friendly environments in the NFL. Not just because of veteran teammates, because of the coaching structure behind them. Think about that. You have two first-team All-Pros in Mitchell and DeJean. You have a defensive system that just anchored the #1 defense in football. You have a Super Bowl championship foundation. And now you add a coach with 2 Super Bowl rings and a track record of refining elite talent. That's not accidental. That's intentional team building. And what makes this even more impressive is that this isn't a flashy headline move. This isn't a blockbuster trade. This isn't a massive free agent signing. This is the kind of under-the-radar addition that championship organizations prioritize quietly while everyone else focuses on splash. If Pellegrino connects with this room the way his former players say he does, and if he continues to refine technique and preparation at the level we've seen in New England and Buffalo, the Eagles' secondary might not just remain elite, it might evolve into the most consistently dominant unit in the league over the next several seasons. That's the bigger picture here. This isn't about replacing one coach. It's about reinforcing a foundation. It's about making sure that the success of Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean isn't a 2-year spike. It's a sustained era. It's about making sure that even if staff members leave for promotions, the standard never dips. And if you're a fan watching this unfold, that should give you confidence in how this franchise operates. Because when you zoom out even further, what you're seeing unfold in Philadelphia isn't just another offseason adjustment, it's a calculated reinforcement of a championship blueprint. The Eagles didn't wait to see if the secondary would regress after Christian Parker's departure. They didn't gamble on inexperience. They brought in Mike Pellegrino, someone who has already navigated high-pressure locker rooms, championship expectations, and elite talent development. That's proactive leadership from the top down. And let's talk about what that means inside the building. When a coach has 2 Super Bowl rings from his time with New England, players listen differently. When that same coach has worked directly with a Defensive Player of the Year in Stephon Gilmore, players understand that his teaching translates to real accolades. When veterans like Jonathan Jones publicly call him a heck of a coach, just a heck of a guy, that tells you he commands respect not through ego, but through connection and preparation. That dynamic matters in a room that already has confidence. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean aren't just promising young players anymore. They are first-team All-Pros. That changes expectations. Now the conversation shifts from development to consistency, from potential to legacy, and having a coach who understands how to sustain high-level performance year after year becomes critical. Pellegrino's background in New England is especially relevant here. The Patriots' defensive philosophy under Bill Belichick was built on adaptability. Week to week, responsibilities could change. Matchups dictated assignments. Corners had to understand the bigger picture, not just their individual role. That mental elasticity is something Vic Fangio's system also demands. So when you merge Pellegrino's detailed, relationship-driven coaching style with Fangio's structured defensive framework, you get continuity without stagnation. You get structure with adaptability. And here's another layer. The Eagles' defense was the #1 unit in football during their Super Bowl run. That isn't something you casually maintain. The rest of the league studies you all offseason. Offensive coordinators dissect tendencies. Quarterbacks analyze coverage disguises. Staying ahead requires evolution. Coaching depth fuels that evolution. Joe Casper overseeing the defensive backs as pass game coordinator ensures schematic cohesion. Pellegrino sharpening corner technique ensures execution remains elite. Roy Anderson stepping into the safety's role maintains positional focus. It's a collaborative ecosystem. This is what separates contenders from dynasties, the ability to absorb change without losing identity. And think about the message this sends to the locker room. It tells veterans and young players alike that the organization is serious about protecting their success. It tells all pros that they won't be left without elite guidance. It tells draft prospects that Philadelphia is a place where defensive backs thrive. That recruiting pitch matters. If the Eagles do invest early in another corner or defensive back in the upcoming draft, that player steps into a room where development isn't theoretical, it's documented. You have coaches who've produced Defensive Player of the Year performances. You have teammates who've reached first-team All-Pro status within 2 seasons. That environment accelerates growth. And let's not ignore the psychological side. When players know their coaching staff is stable, experienced, and deeply invested in their progression, confidence compounds. Mistakes become corrections, not crises. Adjustments become routine. That's how units remain elite instead of fluctuating between hot and cold seasons. The Eagles have built something that feels intentional at every level. From ownership with Jeffrey Lurie, to front office strategy with Howie Roseman, to sideline leadership under Nick Sirianni and Vic Fangio, the emphasis is clear. Build depth everywhere. Mike Pellegrino fits that philosophy perfectly. This move might not dominate national talk shows. It might not generate viral headlines. But inside the NovaCare complex, it could quietly shape the trajectory of the Eagles' defense for years. Because if Mitchell and DeJean continue ascending, if another young corner joins the fold, if Fangio's scheme remains disciplined and adaptive, and if Pellegrino brings the same developmental impact he's shown in New England and Buffalo, then this second